Nobody talked much as the expedition crossed the moon. There was nothing appropriate to say. One thing was clear. Absolutely everybody in the city was supposed to be dead, regardless of what they were, and that anybody that moved in it represented a flaw in the design. There were to be no moon men at all. American author Kurt Vonnegut was writing about the city of Dresden in the aftermath of its horrific firebombing in 1945. But the desolation and pain he described in Slaughterhouse 5 were to be found throughout Germany at the end of World War II. Adolf Hitler's dream of a 1,000-year Reich lay in smoldering ruins. Having guided their nations through years of uncompromising war, the victorious Allies met to determine the type of peace they would impose on a defeated Germany. The country was divided into 4 occupation zones, and Berlin, the capital, into 4 sectors. The object was to prevent Germany, for once and for all, from aspiring to world domination. The Allies could agree on a disarmed and demilitarized Germany, but on little else. The United States, Great Britain, and France wanted a viable Germany to be part of a stable Central Europe. While the Soviet Union wanted to add the nation to its growing empire of satellite republics. In March of 1946, Winston Churchill would declare that an Iron Curtain had fallen across Eastern Europe and that no one knew what was going on behind it. The Cold War had begun in earnest. With East Germany a communist dictatorship, the 3 Western powers intensified their efforts to remake the rest of the country as a liberal democracy. On May 23, 1949, the Basic Law, the Constitution of the fledgling Federal Republic of Germany, was promulgated. In September of that year, the Republic was formally established. Germany had experimented with democracy once before. In 1919, a constitution was passed in Weimar, a forward-thinking document that was nonetheless filled with loopholes. Loopholes that were ruthlessly exploited by Hitler and his followers. The framers of the Basic Law saw to it that all such avenues for future abuse were firmly blocked off. The measure was intended to be provisional, in effect only until such time as the divided nation could be reunited again.
Die Mauer muss weg, die Mauer muss weg, die Mauer muss weg.
40 years later, that dream became a reality. And 10 years beyond that, the Basic Law still guides a stable and peaceful Germany, a nation that has risen phoenix-like from ashes to affluence. A German university choir is touring the United States. Today, it raises no eyebrows. A little over 50 years ago, it would have been unthinkable. Twice in the 20th century, Americans and Germans exchanged not songs, but gunfire. Yet by the late 1940s, the United States stood ready to go to war not with Germany, but over it. The occupier had become a protector. It wasn't a totally surprising development. Ties between Germany and the United States run far and deep. The Barons von Steuben and de Kalb helped the former British colonies win their independence. According to a popular story, some would say myth, the Founding Fathers even considered adopting German as the new nation's official language. Over 25% of Americans have some sort of blood tie to Germany, the country's largest ethnic affiliation. Starting in 1947, the Marshall Plan saved millions of Germans from starvation in the early years of the post-war era and helped the country begin rebuilding its shattered economy. Engineered by U.S. Secretary of State George C. Marshall, the recovery program cost a total of $11 billion.
Achtung, Achtung, hier ist Rias, Berlin.
And when the Russians decided to blockade Berlin, the Allies reacted swiftly with an airlift, not of bombs, but of food. For 462 days, a blockaded West Berlin was kept supplied by the so-called Rosinen, or candy bombers. The American generosity wasn't all based on altruism, of course. West Germany was seen as a bulwark against Soviet expansion.
People did not think of Germany from a military point of view. They thought of Germany as a symbol of resistance to, in effect, communist imperialism. So Berlin became a symbol of the defense of the rest of Europe against the pressures that were coming from Moscow. So from that point of view, it was not militarily important, but it was symbolically crucial.
Government officials in East Berlin weren't just worried about keeping the Allies out, but of keeping their own citizens in. By 1961, the stream of refugees had become a flood, with over 200,000 leaving in that year alone. On August 13, 1961, the city's Soviet sector was sealed off when a wall was built literally overnight along its 26.5-mile length. Now the relationship between America and West Germany was no longer that of victor and vanquished, but of strategic allies and eventually genuine friends.
And therefore, as a free man, I take pride in the words, Ich bin ein Berliner.
The past 50 years of German-American relations have been shaped by close cooperation between the two powerful nations, particularly in the area of economics. Germans and Americans routinely learn each other's language and experience one another's culture. Former military bases have been turned into sites designed to help both nations strengthen and expand their position in the global marketplace.
Now, the German economy is the powerhouse of Europe. So, insofar as Europe and the United States cooperate, which they should, relations between Germany and the United States are especially crucial.
Without the Marshall Plan, without the Berlin airlift, without the presence of the GIs in Germany, today's Germany would certainly be different. So we have a great gratitude towards the United States and the people here in the United States. The German Information Center has offered since 1961 a window to Germany. More and more we go to the virtual side of presenting our information. We have a very attractive homepage, and we have so far over 1 million customers per month. There's a certain optimism in this country, and I think a good portion of it would do us quite good. On the other hand, I think the people in the States would benefit with a more historical perspective. The United States is not alone in this world, that even as powerful as they are, there are certain problems, there are certain challenges that only together we can achieve and solve.
Today's American occupation force is more apt to wear pinstripes than khaki. Lucent Technologies, for example, is a world-known provider of public and private internet services, communication systems, and microelectronic components for manufacturers of finished products. When it came time to select a center for European operations, they chose Nuremberg, Germany.
It was a very large surprise to me when I came here that this labor environment here was so complex, that there was these very direct ties to the major trade unions, that a Tarifvertrag structure was here with very structured rates, and of course this whole notion of co-determination, which suggests that there are many very important decisions that have to be agreed upon between the workers and the company. What has been a very nice surprise here is that the productivity of the people here is, in my opinion, somewhat higher than the same caliber of employee in the United States. Not from a motivation standpoint, simply because from a behavioral standpoint. American workers are very network-oriented, whereas I think our German colleagues are far more focused on technical excellence. So all in all, I think that, yes, it is more expensive to do business here, but when we look at the talent that we have and the market penetration we received, we think it's a good value.
The new states, the former East Germany, are attracting their share of attention as well. Over 1,700 foreign companies have invested in the new states, which are seen as the gateway to the lucrative Eastern European marketplace.
Siemens and Motorola can pull together the resources better here in Dresden. Why in Dresden? Because we already have here a good infrastructure. There is also a good university and a good tradition for manufacturing. We felt very welcome here in Dresden.
Of course, the business traffic is not just one way. German firms have become a growing presence in the United States, too. Spartanburg, South Carolina, is home to a BMW auto production facility. The plant employs some 2,000 mostly American workers. In the year 2000, the company is expected to have made a total investment here of $1.2 billion. For the American workers, the plant represents a cultural as well as an economic opportunity.
With this company, it's a lot more dynamic. I think changes happen here a lot faster and more frequent than what I've experienced in the past. Occasionally we have a language barrier, but for the most part it's pretty transparent. I find that the people are really easy to get along with. And I've been very fortunate to always work with good people.
We Americans really like to sort of jump into the water and start swimming. We move in short, quick steps, and the results are we have a very practical, flexible approach. The Germans, on the other side of the coin, spend a great deal of time and effort, intellectual effort, in the planning side of it, and then move forward on implementation. I think also, too, that the company is very sensitive to certain times of the year that really should be family-driven, quiet, private time. A good example would be between Christmas and New Year's, where we essentially shut down our plant here.
For their German counterparts, part of their challenge is fitting into the American way of life.
People are very open, very direct, friendly. It's easy to get in touch, whether it's the CEO or the clerk in the back office. So there is not this kind of hierarchy what you more experience in Germany, where the boss is in his corner office and with a closed door and the secretary shielding him from all.
Marcus's wife, Katrin, is also adapting to a new lifestyle.
This is the first time in my life that I experience that I'm German. Even if you go to a supermarket, you miss a couple of things you're so used to buy in Germany. You experience new things. And then your kind of German behavior. In Germany, it's not tradition, but if you talk to people, you set up an appointment and you said, okay, I come tomorrow. And if it's not working out, you call ahead and said, okay, I can't come, I'm sorry. And here, Americans, they don't worry about that. They don't come. They just don't show up. Then you figure out, oh my God, I'm so strict in a certain way, and I'm so German.
People in this country seem to be able to start out anew at any given point in their life, you know. Things may fall apart very easily. I mean, we don't have the social network here that exists in Germany. You forget about East Germany even. I mean, that was a totally sheltered society. This kind of initiative and boldness and energy is sometimes missing in Germany. I think Germans tend to do one thing for their whole life and be content with that, but there is no real need to do anything else if they don't want to.
Cultural exchange isn't just for the adult workforce. German students who are interested in the American educational system can get a first-hand look at it under the auspices of the American Field Service.
Teachers are nice, they are helpful, but you don't have to participate that much in class. They just tell you what to do, they use the overhead a lot, write things on, and you just have to copy them. In some subjects we have usually multiple choice tests, which is you just have to cross on the right answers, and that is easier for me. Back in Germany, you are asked questions which go further on than what the teachers actually told you. You have to think more.
What have we learned about Germany?
Well, I think that there is a certain stereotype about neatness and disciplined behavior, and believe it or not, I believe that now to be true. Niels has demonstrated some features that I'm thrilled to see. He's very careful about loading the dishwasher. He's very precise about measuring things that he uses in the kitchen, and the first time I saw it happen, I started to laugh out loud because I thought, my gosh, this is really the kind of disciplined behavior I expected.
German students who can't make the trip overseas can still get a feel for the American way of life at one of Germany's 4 America houses. There were once over 50 such establishments, but the pervasiveness of American culture and budget cuts by the U.S. Congress have caused that number to dwindle.
The closure of America houses was predominantly a budgetary impact, which regrettably had to be felt in many places. And the fact that there are as many left now, which is more than in any other country in the world by about double, in the few cases where there are any such institutions, it is a proof still of the centrality of Germany to our foreign policy.
There were some who were not content to watch their local America House die a slow death. Chris Peters resigned the United States Information Service after 33 years to join forces with others interested in keeping the Munich branch afloat.
There are politicians on both sides of the Atlantic who are always saying we must pass the torch of the German-American friendship on to the young people. Well, the young people come to the America House with the torch and it is closed because the Americans shut it down. And there I thought, take the torch, do it your own way and convince the Bavarian state government that it should continue. And it worked. And I'm very proud of it.
The America Houses have a counterpart on U.S. soil, the Goethe Institutes, such as this establishment located in Boston. Here, American students can learn the German language and discover German culture. Like the America houses, however, the Goethe Institutes have fallen on hard financial times and have had to rely on their own wit to supplement diminishing funds.
We are at a turning point again because the Cold War is over. We were never an instrument of the government. We always defined ourselves as a cultural institution which brought people together. We can provide the information from the other side, both from Germany to the United States and from the United States to Germany.
I have been in touch with Leipzig for many years, since 1983, when I first went over there to do some music research. And I met the choir, the director, and we hit it off. And immediately we talked about the possibility of an exchange of conductors between Rutgers University and my school, and everyone is absolutely delighted. I think the Leipzig students are having a great time. I know my students are.
In broken German and in broken English, we managed to explain to ourselves, and it was the most phenomenal experience of my life.
You get to talk to them, find out their experiences, find out that their experiences are a whole lot different than yours, even though they live on the other side of the ocean.
I would say that the Leipzig choir is definitely raising our standards.
If the emphasis in recent years has shifted from cultural to financial, there are still occasions when Germans and Americans from all walks of life can get together and attempt to understand one another over food, drink, and fun. The Sister City movement is alive and well between the two countries. And transplanted Americans and Germans are frequently exposed to the customs and culture of their hosts. Finally, there is traffic between the two countries by a growing army of tourists.
Gives you free transportation.
Bavaria, it's still #1 in the list of the visited states in Germany. Then we do have Hesse, #2, Baden-Württemberg, and North Rhine-Westphalia, but this is in fact of the Rhine River. The new states are also of a big interest here in the United States, especially the cities like Dresden, Leipzig, and as you know, the cultural city of Europe is Weimar. And then naturally Berlin, our capital, is of a very important interest.
Relations between Germans and Americans have undergone significant changes over the course of the last 5 decades. A vanquished people have become self-confident partners who invest in the United States and who travel there for both business and pleasure, and who take quite seriously their role as ambassadors of the German language and culture. Another thing Germans and Americans have in common: they have both become major players in the global marketplace. A visitor to Germany immediately after the end of the Second World War would have been hard-pressed to imagine that in a few decades, the nation would take its place on a more or less equal footing with England, France, and the United States. Indeed, to many Germans themselves, this economic turnaround was nothing less than a miracle. There was a most unlikely hero in Germany's so-called economic miracle, the Volkswagen Beetle, a motorized blister that captured the world's imagination and loosened its purse strings. By the 1950s, Germany began the climb from fiscal doormat to economic dynamo. The term "made in Germany" eventually would become synonymous with excellence. Ludwig Erhard, the Federal Republic's first Minister of Finance, intensely disliked the term economic miracle. Germany's successful economic revival, according to Erhard, was due not so much to divine intervention as to a skilled and productive workforce. Prosperity begins to take hold. People can afford luxuries as well as necessities. By 1969, German consumers have 10 times the buying power that they did in 1950. 1 in 4 owns an automobile, and 1 in 5 is able to take vacations outside of the country. Today, Germany's overall economic output puts it in 3rd place globally, while it ranks number 2 in terms of world trade. Part of that excellent performance has been brought about by government decree.
What we call the free market in the United States is over here having an additional verb saying the social free market, and that means a social network that helps everyone, either unemployed or employed, to feel as a part of the network and part of the society. Social benefits alone are not a question of how expensive they are. The social system is one part and one key question towards the success of a system. There's also a tax system that either provides and supports a climate for entrepreneurs. And third, it is also the community that helps providing jobs. And I do definitely think that the social market system has had a success. But looking at results now also means looking at the benefits that come from great contributions from the United States and from its people for half a century.
Since the German market is still one of the biggest financial markets and pretty untapped when it comes to companies that are listed at the New York Stock Exchange, and I think both exchanges as well here in the New York and the Nasdaq stock market are pretty eager to get German companies to be listed here. But I think the bigger issue really is that German companies get the opportunity to tap the world's largest financial markets. I mean, only down here at the New York Stock Exchange, you trade about $30 billion a day compared to, let's say, about $5 billion in the German stock market. So you really have the opportunity to raise capital in the world's financial biggest market.
It would be misleading to suggest that Germany's resurgence has been one long, smooth climb. By the early 1990s, the steam seemed to go out of the juggernaut. Many claimed that German industry had lost its verve, and its leaders, their nerve.
The older generation saw with the children eye, they saw the war and they thought they were building up something better. They were rebuilding a better country, and then realizing after 40 years, we didn't really. The country failed. This didn't work. This idea didn't work out.
With reunification came also a steep price tag.
Germany puts into Eastern Germany annually the equivalent of the entire Marshall Plan that ran for 3 years and was given to 15 countries. So they put that sum in today's terms annually into Eastern Germany, and there's no end in sight. We don't really know when Eastern Germany is going to back up on its feet again.
The new economic order caught many in the new states unprepared. When thousands of unnecessary jobs created under the communist regime were eliminated, the unemployment rate in the East rose to 16%, almost twice the number in the West.
I
have been unemployed since January 1998. And the longer the unemployment lasts, the more I become depressed because I don't see any success. You get the impression that your friends don't accept you as much anymore. And I believe that this is a very big problem. I have constantly tried to get new work, which is very difficult because of my age. At the moment, I am working at Noris in Nuremberg, where I am taking part in an extended vocational training program funded by the Unemployment Office. I have few financial disadvantages because I receive a monthly travel allowance from the Unemployment Office as long as I stay with the program. I am happy to take part because I do hope to have work afterwards.
Problems still exist, but Germany is trying to overcome the slump which plagued it in the early 90s.
I think we shouldn't talk so much about problems, but more about tasks and challenges. Innovation, the readiness to take risks and deciding and acting self-reliantly is what counts. We should really concentrate on solving the problems within the country with self-initiative and not always wait for others to do so.
Another critical factor is ensuring a continuous supply of trained workers. This the Federal Republic has done through its dual training system, which enables some 70% of the nation's young people to learn a trade or occupation after leaving school. They spend 3 or 4 days a week as trainees at their chosen firms, and the rest in vocational schools.
I think the dual system of education is good because it varies more and is at the same time more effective, and therefore it is more fun because you can apply at work what you have learned during your lessons.
Presently, over 1.5 million young people are receiving vocational training in industry and commerce, or are learning one of the 360 recognized occupations in the public sector. The term "made in Germany" is no longer sufficient to guarantee sales. The label to look for now is "engineered in Germany." More and more, German industry is branching out into high-tech areas, such as the magnetic levitation trans-rapid train, sophisticated traffic control systems, aerospace, and environmentally friendly alternative energy. Here at Munich Airport, for instance, is the world's first fully automated hydrogen filling station, which will fuel the vehicles of the near future. Germany will likely shift from an industrial to an information society in the 21st century. But for now, at least, manufacturing is still the backbone of the German economy. Nearly 7 million Germans work in the manufacturing sector, with ranges from electronics to engineering to the item guaranteed to make the pulse of every red-blooded German begin racing, the automobile. Germans love their cars, and so, for that matter, does the rest of the world. Audi, BMW, Daimler-Benz, Opel, Porsche, and Volkswagen have become household names around the globe. Germany is the world's third largest car producer, behind only the United States and Japan. And nearly 1 out of every 7 jobs in the Federal Republic is connected in some way to the automotive industry. Still, as was painfully discovered during the early 90s, you can coast only so far on your reputation, no matter how impressive. Meeting tomorrow's needs will be a challenge for automakers throughout the world.
In 10 or 20 years, we will see gasoline-powered and hydrogen-powered cars. Hydrogen-powered cars will also use gasoline, because in 15 years there probably will not be a complete network of hydrogen stations. We want to offer our customers complete mobility with both gasoline or hydrogen. Maybe after 30 years there will be more hydrogen-powered cars, because this is the future.
Moves such as the recent merger between Chrysler Motors and Daimler-Benz will ensure that Germany remains a major player in the auto industry for years to come. In the 1920s and 30s, Germany was making a name for itself as a center of modern culture. That all changed with the ascension of Adolf Hitler and his National Socialists. Scores of artists, writers, architects, musicians, directors, and actors fled overseas. The German cinema was particularly hard hit. The famed film studios at Babelsberg saw some of its major talent depart for the United States, such as the directors Fritz Lang and Ernst Lubitsch, who directed more than 70 films. And F.W. Murnau. Taboo was Murnau's last film. He died in a car crash just before the premiere. And the international film star Marlene Dietrich. They left behind an industry that confined itself mostly to crude propaganda, like The Jew Süß, an anti-Semitic rant disguised as a drama. It wouldn't be until the late 1960s and 1970s that the German cinema would shake off its doldrums and begin attracting world attention again. A new generation of directors arose, such as Rainer Werner Fassbinder and Wolfgang Petersen, who won international acclaim for Das Boot and later directed a popular American release, Air Force One. And also Wim Wenders, who made films with challenging themes and unsparing vision.
Wann begann die Zeit und wo endet der Raum? Ist das Leben unter der Sonne nicht bloß ein Traum? Ist, was ich sehe und höre und rieche.
The post-war cinema in the East consisted occasionally of a non-propaganda effort, such as this film from Frank Bayer, which would make it to the screen only to be banned shortly thereafter. Audiences were seldom treated to these few exceptions, such as Exile by Egon Günther and Little Angel by Helge Misselwitz. Upon reunification, DEFA, the East's production arm, could no longer survive financially and closed. Today, a new studio is being built at Babelsberg. Backed by large international investment, it promises to be one of Europe's largest production facilities. Volker Schlöndorff has been one of the driving forces behind the new studios, an expert adapter of literary works. Schlöndorff's version of The Tin Drum won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Film in 1980.
When the wall came down and I was in New York, everybody was moved, but I felt this was my event. So I said, what am I doing in New York? I should go back to Germany and back to Berlin. As I came here, I discovered that these studios of the 30s and 20s were still here, were still in existence with huge 120 acres, more than 700 people working here in third and fourth generation. And I felt that this is one of the very few traditions we can be proud of. This is where Metropolis and M and the Blue Angel and Murnau's film and all that has been created, including also the socialist filmmaking, so-called socialist, which has been going on here for 40 years. Well, internationally, German films at this moment don't mean much. Whereas within the country, there's a whole generation of young filmmakers, and especially of young actors and writers, who are very much in sync with their audience. The fact is that these films don't look very German. Actually, they kind of are sort of an international blend. Whereas in the 60s, when the so-called new German cinema, the films of Herzog, Fassbinder and others, and myself, I'd almost say like Gloria Swanson in Sunset Boulevard, we had faces. And we never cared about whether the story was well told or not told. Just everybody could tell the story the way he felt about it. Now it's all rules, especially in, I guess, in Hollywood. I mean, it is sort of a computerized way of storytelling. So it is extremely successful in terms of market, but it's not creativity in the sense that it's the expression of an individual, how he feels the world, the experiences he went through, which after all is the true creativity.
Another development in German cinema has been the emergence of female directors.
Oh, Max, danke. Schick.
Caroline Link.
Danke, ist doch schick.
Ich wollte sowieso gerade einkaufen gehen.
Margarete von Trotter.
Und das ist eine ganz schöne...
One of the most prominent women to conquer the screen has been Doris Dörrie.
Because of my kid, I tend to see things much more clearly and much more focused. And I've become aware of the many, many miracles. The most interesting stories are being told about everyday life, or they're at least hidden in everyday life, which I also think is very cinematic. Whereas German storytelling for the screen, but also in German literature, tends to be very abstract. For men, it seems to be quite easy to see themselves as artists in direct heritage to other artists. Whereas myself, yes, I can appreciate their work, but I don't feel related. What did influence me was the new American cinema and American literature. My students, my film students here and my students in America tend to be interested in very different things, and also they tend to be able to do very different things. And I teach writing, and as far as writing goes, it's really very interesting because I have to teach the exact opposite. What I try to teach my film students here is constant encouragement. And that's a very alien concept to Germans. And I think that's very, very important for artists in general, for people in general, but maybe especially for artists, to be encouraged in your particular vision or your particular way of perceiving the world. I try to teach my students to just do it, to just be courageous enough and do it. And that alone is difficult for Germans in general. Whereas the American is to, just do it. And I think it really helps to just do it.
Germans continue to take their music seriously. The Federal Republic is home to 121 opera houses and 141 professional orchestras. German conductors, musicians, and vocal artists perform in concert halls all over the world. Jazz, which originally became popular in Germany as part of the protest movement, has now become a major genre in its own right. According to polls, in fact, more young Germans would rather listen to jazz than watch television. The land of Beethoven, Bach, and Brahms has even started generating its own rock sound, led by groups such as H Blocks from Münster and BAP from the Cologne area. One out of every 4 German students can play a musical instrument, and frequent competitions help bring new talent to the forefront. Much of early post-war Germany's literary output were masterpieces of evasion. Few authors addressed Germany's defeat or guilt directly, relying instead on religious or metaphysical metaphors. Group 47, a band of German-language writers, took a different stance, seeing their role as one of passing moral judgment. Among them were Nobel Prize winner Heinrich Böll and Günter Grass, author of The Tin Drum and The Flounder.
Group 47 had a cultural and political responsibility to revive German literature after the Third Reich. And that is definitely and eminently political.
In the East, freedom of information and the exchange of ideas were much more limited. Thinly veiled propaganda and critiques of forbidden Western writers constituted much of the standard fare. Authors who didn't parrot the party line were forced to flee their homes. A major exception to the overall mediocrity of Eastern letters was Christa Wolf. Along with a few fellow artists in the German Democratic Republic, Wolf struggled to find a path between authenticity and governmental guidelines. If the current state of German literature is not as vibrant as it has been in the past, it's not for a lack of great themes. Somewhere in the wings, for instance, is a future Heinrich Böll or Günter Grass or Christa Wolf who will turn the issues of reunification into great literature. Germany has far to go before it can reclaim its one-time eminence as a cultural mecca. But the country's efforts have not gone unnoticed. A prime example is Weimar, once the home of Goethe, Schiller, Bach, Liszt, and Nietzsche. In stark contrast to its physical beauty is the shame it bears as the neighbor of the infamous Buchenwald concentration camp. But Weimar has changed since the end of World War II, evolving from a provincial backwater to being named Europe's cultural city of 1999. Was it simply luck? Or perhaps a portent of things to come?
What you can say about this city, that it will be a cultural center again, and a cultivated city is necessary and is wonderful because at least it gives an example for whole Germany that we should never come into the danger that we underestimate the role of culture, of poetry, of music, of paintings, of everything what makes life worthwhile.
After the end of the war, the major mandate for Germany's remaining architects was not to create beauty, but to work fast. A large homeless population stood in desperate need of shelter. wasn't until the 1960s that citizens could afford the luxury of complaining about the sterility of their surroundings. By then, two schools of architectural philosophy had emerged. On the one hand was modern functionalism, which prevailed in Hamburg, Berlin, and Frankfurt am Main. Architects in Nuremberg, Freiburg, and Munich, on the other hand, chose to preserve and restore the existing character of their cities. By issuing the Decree on 16 Regulations regarding urban planning, the German Democratic Republic set itself firmly on the road to prefabricated monotony on an epic scale. There were a few successes in restoring historic buildings, most notably the Semper Opera House and the Zwinger in Dresden. But for the most part, the East lacked the money and manpower to build anything resembling effective public architecture. That's all changing. Construction in the new states is proceeding at a rapid pace. And throughout Germany, example after example can be found of daring, provocative, and striking design.
This century is the century of social and cultural revolutions. And it's also a permanent revolution in arts and architecture. After the Second World War, it was necessary to overcome the trauma of the Third Reich. That means to overcome monumentalism and crude ideology. And it was necessary to overcome the kind of hierarchic classical architecture, which was a caricature of the Roman and Greek architecture. I think there has happened a piece of art in Berlin with our main building, with our most important building, the Parliament in Berlin. A building which was heavy, dark, suddenly was changed into a phenomenon of lightness, light, motion, and insofar this was a very important step to free ourselves. The same I did with the New Fair building in Leipzig. In reality, it's an ensemble of geometry, of axis, of symmetry, long sequences of colonnades, tower, walls, classical language and architecture in very big dimensions. But the fascinating result is everything is transparent, everything is light. I do not understand why the Germans cry, why they are so lamoyant. Maybe that they still are in the behavior of trying to overcome a trauma after the war. I like to live in this country, not only as an architect, but also as a man who is able to go 1 year long, every day into a different museum, into a different theater, and into a different opera. It's totally fascinating.
It's a work in progress, but thanks to an infusion of public and private money, talent and energy, the German Federal Republic has a cultural scene. A cultural scene that even many a one-time critic has fallen in love with all over again. Next, on the fall and rise of Germany, Germans show off their sporting side while working to rebuild their spiritual heritage. They make difficult decisions in the present, peer into what seems to be a dazzling future, and attempt to come to terms with their troubled past. Join us as the fall and rise of Germany continues.
This presentation of the Fall and Rise of Germany is underwritten by Bayerischer Rundfunk.